Hey guys, welcome back to my workbench. My name is Erica, and I am so glad that you're here. Here is that dumpster saw, the Stihl MS260. This was my last video. We did some testing on this, and we found the impulse line has a crack in it, and we also suspect rusty, noisy crank bearings. So I asked you guys to tell me in the comments what you want me to do with this, and 99% of you said tear this thing down and let's have a closer look. So that's what we're going to do today. Also, Tyler has finished with that 026 Arctic. So in a bit, we will have a look at it, take it outside, and try to start it. So let's get started. Come with me and let's tear this 260 apart. All right, MS260 dumpster saw. Let's get started. I'm going to pull my pressure vac tools off of it and we'll get going here. I'll dump that bar oil out. We don't need any fluids in this. Let's pull that recoil off. Let's remove the flywheel. Let's take the clutch off. Let's take this all apart. Let's get that oil pump out of there. There's a couple T27s holding it on. I wrecked that line pulling it off of there. So there's our oil pump. It is hard to get those off in one piece, and you can see that I damaged it there. Let's just remove that little spring there. I don't want to lose that. All right, well, that side's pretty well stripped down. Let's take this handle off. 4 screws, 2 there and 2 on the bottom. Let's get this wiring out of the way. Okay, so both those are unhooked. Then we'll pull the whole thing up through. The grommet comes with the wires. Remove that coil. There's two T27s. Remove that AV mount. And there's our coil off. Got those two rings out. Let's pull that plug out, or pry that plug out. And there's a T27 in there. Chain catcher. I'm going to bend it. I can't get it off because it's bent in the way. So we'll just bend it. And we'll pry that out. And there's a T27 down in there as well. We're getting close here to getting the tank off. I'm just going to pop that AV mount out. There's that peg there that you have to get off of. So pretty much all that's left holding these together is our impulse line and our intake boot. I'm going to push the intake boot down in there. The impulse line is already ripped. So the intake boot is disconnected. The only thing left holding this thing together is that impulse line, which we replaced on that 026 a few days ago. Remember how it comes out here and attaches to a barb down in here? I'm just going to reach down and pry it off the barb. It'll be hard to show you this, so you'll just have to believe me on this one. There we go. I'm going to take that bumper spike off. Nobody wants to get stabbed with that. Now we're going to go clean this thing up. Actually, Tyler might clean this thing up for me. I'll be back. So before we go for cleaning, we plug up all of our holes. Impulse line is plugged up with an old impulse line. Intake boot, spark plug in, decompression plug in, and the exhaust is plugged off. Okay, off for cleaning. While Tyler's over there cleaning that MS260 up, let's take a look at his work. Here is that Stihl 026 Arctic. So this video aired, I think 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it's been a little bit. We took this saw outside and it wouldn't fire for us. We went through it and we found a leak at the intake boot. So all Tyler has done here is replace the intake boot and the rotten fuel line and the fuel filter. And if you've seen the last video we did, we discovered this is not a Stihl piston cylinder in this, it's aftermarket. So somebody has rebuilt it. And there is a nick in this intake boot, like a tool nick. Just trying to find it here. There it is. See that right there? So maybe whoever rebuilt this thing damaged that while they were doing it. Okay, so fuel filter, fuel line, intake boot. It's all it's been done to this. Will it start? God only knows. So he's put fuel in it for me. Let's take it outside and see if it'll do anything at all. I'll meet you out there. Here's our crankcase, all cleaned up. Tyler did a good job getting that cleaned up. Let me show you the impulse line. This is where we detected that leak. I'm going to show you something else that we found. So this here, that's your intake boot. Look at that. It's also damaged. I didn't see that when we did the testing. I just seen the leak at the impulse, so I figured that was our problem, but we had more than one leak. So this thing will also need an intake boot. We were likely hearing this leak, but seeing this leak. Well, let's pull the cylinder off of this. This should walk itself out, and it's pretty tough to get out. It doesn't feel right. You notice how none of them snapped for me to break loose? They all just quietly came loose. I was expecting 4 good snaps. I'm starting to wonder now if somebody has been into this saw. There we go. Cylinder is off. So what I'm seeing here is hardware that doesn't match. Kind of a gold colored bolt. So someone's had this off. There's the base gasket. Part of the gasket's missing right there. It's not on the bottom of the cylinder. That bolt came out really tough. So yeah, somebody's been into this. That's too bad. This thing's been dinked with. Looks like rust juice to me. Well, let's take it apart. That there is a tool from Stihl. So I'm going to reach in here with a pick and remove the circlip right there. It flew, but I can see it. There's the piston. That piston says Molly on it. Molly. So that'd be a Stihl piston. So some of you have seen this before. If you haven't, that's our little connecting rod. Crankshaft is down in there. So something to check when you're doing this is for play. So up and down play, there isn't any, and you don't want any. A little bit of like sideways like that, that's normal, but up and down, and there isn't any. Something else to look for is discoloration on the connecting rod. So when they get hot, they will turn a color of blue. I don't see any discoloration on this one. So when you hear someone talk about removing the base gasket or a base gasket delete, that there is your base gasket. And what they're doing is pulling the cylinder off, removing this gasket, and then just using some silicone and putting it back together. So when your piston comes up, by deleting that gasket, your piston would come up closer to the top of that cylinder. Remember the 024 video we did that saw that had high compression, and we measured the squish, and there was less than a spark plug gap of squish room up top? So if you didn't measure your squish first, remove this gasket, there is the possibility of your piston coming up and smashing into the top of the cylinder. I'm going to remove the chain tensioner. I guess I could have done that earlier. Okay, well, let's start getting ready to split the case. I've got some T27s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's take them out. One, two, three, 4, 5. There's a dowel pin here to punch through. I'm going to use a 5/32 or a 4 mil punch. So there's a few ways to split this thing apart. I have some different tools I'll show you. You haven't seen these tools yet. This is a set of tools from Stihl, and there are part numbers. This one has a number on it. 5910, 890, 4505. This is a Husqvarna tool. It doesn't work on the MS260. Works on some stuff. Looks like you could almost make that at home. I don't have the part number for this one, but bought that from Husqvarna. So Stihl calls this the AS tool. I'm sure that stands for something in German. Crankshaft up through the hole. We're going to put a couple bar nuts on there, and then we'll tighten them down. You're probably thinking that tool looks very shiny and new. This isn't a tool that gets used very much around here. So we've got the bar nuts tightened down. So we're going to turn this, and this is going to push on the crankshaft, and it'll split these apart. That dowel pin that you've seen me take out there, you always want to take that out before doing this. I've seen that pin hold these halves together and be doing this and that thing be holding the saw together. What you're hearing right now is the bearing coming off the crankshaft. So there is your bar oil reservoir. There's your bar oil line and filter. Rust juice. Something very rare, but we have seen it here. So you have a pressure vac leak and you can't find it anywhere. Like I said, very rare, but you can get a leak here at this gasket going into your bar oil. So the engine's sucking bar oil in, air is being pushed out. I know a lot of you have probably never seen that or heard of that before, but it has happened. Okay, let me get my tool back off of here. Loosen those bar nuts. That's a pretty handy tool, isn't it? Any of you guys who have never seen this before, your mouth's probably hanging open right now. If you want one of these, you can take the part number into your Stihl dealer and order one. Or maybe you can make one. There's the part number again, 5910 890 2222. Give you a good look at this in case you want to try making one. It's really pretty simple. So there's the crank bearing on the clutch side. There's the crank seal. Very rusty. So this thing somehow got water in it at some point. Those bearings sat in water. Bearings don't like water. Well, let's go ahead and remove the flywheel side of the crankcase. If you ever wondered what's going on inside your chainsaw when it's running, we've got a pretty good look at it right now with having this thing split in half. So if your chainsaw is running at 12,000 RPM, this thing is turning 12,000 times per minute, if you can imagine that. There's the impulse, that barb right there that we put the impulse line on. We've talked about that in the last few videos. Pretty neat, eh? So we need to separate this crankcase from that crankshaft. This is called the ZS tool from Stihl. I'm sure that stands for something in German. So I went to the service manual for the MS260 and got the instructions, because there's 3 discs, and so the service manual tells me what tools to use. So it tells me to keep number 6 is going to be at the bottom when I put it in, and to put these in the number 6 holes. So just like that. You're probably wondering, what did I put those bolts into? So remember when these 2 halves were together and I removed those 5 bolts? So we just used the threaded holes There we are. I'm not 100% sure that you can still buy this tool from Stihl. I believe that tool I just used has been replaced with this tool. So there's our 2 crank bearings, crank seals. Did you know that your saw's serial number is also printed in here? Let's get the bearing and seal out of the clutch side. There's the crank seal. Let's get that crank seal out. We're going to use a punch from the back side and just gently push it out. Okay, there's our other crank seal out.
All right, got the arbor press rigged up. There's the tool, 1118-893-7200. So put that in the bearing, press, just like that. And there's our crank bearing. Do the other side. I gotta get rigged up here. Raise that up. Now, flywheel side's different part number. There. There.
And here is our crank bearings. You can see the band of rust in there. Made in Portugal. So water must have somehow gotten here. Probably sat out in the rain by the looks of it. They don't sound as loud when they're out of the saw as they do when they're in the saw. Well, if you've ever wondered, what does an MS260 look like completely tore apart? Now you know. We have pretty much dissected this chainsaw, except for the carburetor. We will assume this carb needs a rebuild kit. So I have tallied up a list of all the things that I would need if I were going to put this chainsaw back together. So I would need an impulse line, an intake boot. I would replace that air filter. That air filter's shot. The rim sprocket is worn out. 2 new crank bearings, a gasket set, which includes new crank seals, the base gasket, all of the seals and gaskets that we'll need, the oil pump line that I wrecked taking it off, new fuel line, new fuel filter, carb kit for that carburetor, the decompression valve. These are kind of a wear item, and assuming this is original, I wouldn't want to go through all this and put this back in, so I would either put a new decompression valve in or I would plug it up. I have not decided on that one yet. Piston rings. So I would clean this cylinder up, I would clean this piston up, and I would replace those piston rings. And we have no clutch cover, no bar nuts, no bar and chain. So I know there's a lot of interest in the economics of doing something like this. So let's say you go to the dump and you find an MS260 lying there in the garbage pile with no bar, no chain, no clutch cover. And you bring it home and you find something similar to this. I believe that by the time you have ordered all the parts that you need to put this back together, the saw is probably in the end going to be worth about what you have to put into it to get it back up into top running condition. And assuming that you have to buy a bar and chain for it. Maybe you have a bar and chain at home, but let's say you don't. You find the saw, you want to fix it. If you have to go to the dealer or somewhere and buy a bar, a chain, and a clutch cover for it, add that to the cost, this adds up pretty quickly. Just this intake boot, there's $50 right there. Crank bearings, $29 a piece. I won't tell you everything, but I'll just tell you the larger ones. Air filter, $20 or $25. The gasket set's $25. Fuel line, fuel filter, piston rings. You see where this goes. And then, add shipping cost onto that, and then add any taxes. Up here in Canada, add 13% to all of those prices. So is this saw worth doing this to? Probably not. If you're going to do the work yourself and you like the saw, it's your own time, you're not paying someone to do it, absolutely. paying a shop to do this? Probably not. Should this MS260 open up its own GoFundMe account? What will I do with this MS260 when it's done? Maybe I'll throw it up on eBay, and then whatever funds it can generate, we can put that towards the next project. And I have lots of projects out back that need to be fixed. So the very interesting thing about making these YouTube videos is that if you guys weren't here with me, this saw would already have been boxed up and went back to the crypt. But because you're here and you're so interested in this, you've actually made me more interested in this. So together, we are going to order everything that we need, and we're going to put this chainsaw back together. Tyler, MS260 parts, please. In a couple weeks or so, everything's going to arrive here to put this back together. These plastics, I know I've had lots of recommendations in the comments about how to clean these up, and we may experiment with these, cleaning them up. And also, I believe these are still available to buy, and they're not really that expensive. So if I'm going to go through all of this expense, you know, what's another few dollars to maybe just put new shiny plastics on it? But we'll see. I haven't decided on that yet. So let me see if I've covered everything here. This is going to be quite a job, but together we will get it done. Oh, one last thing before you leave. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Just hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. Like this video and leave me a comment or 2 or 3 down below. I'm not really familiar with the YouTube thing, but what I'm seeing is that when you like, when you comment, when we interact in the comment section, YouTube seems to like that. And I think it makes them push this video out further to maybe people who don't know that I exist here. And the more people that watch these videos, the more time I can spend with you at this table doing things like this. And this is what I really want to do. So I just want to say another time that I really appreciate all of you being here and watching this. I had no idea that there was people out there that wanted to watch me fix chainsaws. I so appreciate the likes, the comments, and to those of you that have hit the subscribe button, it means a lot to me. So our parts are ordered, I've been told. I am off to get fresh coffee. I'm going to box this stuff up. I won't do anything with it until we get together again, and we will clean this up together, and you will see every single step of this. So for my next saw, I have an MS260 over there that was dropped off for service, and I don't think it's running correctly. And since we have just dissected an MS260, I think it would be interesting to throw another 260 up on the table right behind it and service it and go through it. What do you guys think? I think that's what we'll do. So after a break and a cleanup here, let's get on to the next MS260. See you guys in the next video.